Breaking news now, Nikki Haley announces a 2024 presidential campaign. The former South Carolina governor and United Nations ambassador becomes the first major challenger to former President Donald Trump.
When Ed Kilgore found out yesterday that Nikki Haley was planning to run for president, he wasn't exactly surprised. Ed's a political columnist for New York Magazine, and he's been keeping tabs on Haley's career for a while.
And I think anybody who's followed her career knows that she's shown every indication of the affliction by which politicians look in the mirror and see a future president of the United States. So I was not the least bit surprised.
Haley's only the second person to declare her intent to run in 2024. The other one, of course, is Donald Trump. A quick reminder, Haley achieved a national profile when she served as Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. Now, she's the first one to challenge him for the Republican nomination. To announce her candidacy, Haley released a video making her first presidential pitch to the country. Ed wasn't too impressed.
The railroad tracks divided the town by race. I was the proud daughter of Indian immigrants. Not black, not white. I was different. But my mom would always say your job is not to focus on the differences, but the similarities.
It's sort of the non-white person who offers moral authority in absolving white conservatives of any implications of racism.
Some look at our past as evidence that America's founding principles are bad.
And, there's nothing that white conservatives love more than being reassured that they're not racist by non-white voices. And that's what Haley is taking advantage of. I must say, I didn't think it was very well done.
According to Ed, Haley's biggest problem is that she can't seem to articulate why she should be the next commander-in-chief. She's got no catchy slogan, no major endorsement, no particularly remarkable achievements to point to.
She's actually a pretty well-known national Republican figure, yet she's mired in the low single digits in every poll that shows her going up against Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. So I'm not very impressed at how she seems to be proceeding at this point. There may be some sort of hope that DeSantis and Trump will engage in some sort of murder-suicide act in which they drive up each other's negatives to the point where Republican voters are looking for a fresh face and someone a little more positive than either of those gentlemen. But again, this gets back to her timing problem. All this has got to happen pretty fast.
Today on the show, Nikki Haley wants to take on Donald Trump. And even though it's February 2023, she might already be falling behind. I'm Mary C. Curtis, filling in for Mary Harris. Stick around.
Support for this podcast comes from Wise, the universal account that lets you send, spend, and receive money internationally. With one account for over 50 currencies, who exactly is Wise made for? It's made for jet setters and slow travelers, for seeing old friends in new places. Wise is made for business in the city and pleasure on the coast, for studying abroad and supporting your little brother's schooling back home. Wise is made for people without borders, who want to live truly global lives with ease. You see, with Wise, you always get the mid-market exchange rate whenever you convert or spend different currencies. There are no markups and no hidden fees. That's pounds to pesos, dollars to dong, just like that. Helping you save on currency conversion wherever your money takes you. Wise, it's the account that's made for the world. Join 13 million customers and learn how the Wise account could work for you at wise.com/whatnext.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, when you're listening, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right now from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $698 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
Can you introduce our listeners a bit to the Nikki Haley story, starting with her early life in South Carolina?
Yeah, well, she grew up in South Carolina, the child of Indian immigrants who are actually Sikhs. She followed the Sikh religion until well into her adulthood when she converted to Methodism. And as a fairly young woman, she had a couple of business ventures. She was elected to the state legislature from a Columbia suburb and very quickly identified herself with the hardcore right-wing portion of the South Carolina party, but one that was, thought of itself as modern and free of the kind of racism that had afflicted not just the state, but the Republican Party there for a long time.
It's no longer about electing Republicans, it's about electing conservatives. We need fresh faces, fresh voices, and fresh ideas working for the people of this state, not the power of the legislature.
And so she was sort of a, reform conservative figure in South Carolina. In 2010, when she ran for governor as a very much a long shot, she either was afflicted by or got lucky because of, depending on how you look at it, 2 different men made apparently baseless accusations of sexual infidelity on her part, that they had had flings with her, and they never supplied any concrete evidence. And that naturally made Nikki Haley, a sympathetic figure to a lot of voters who had never heard of her. And that, that also made her a great object of affection from Sarah Palin, who dubbed her a Mama Grizzly and came into South Carolina and campaigned for her, probably at the peak of Palin's popularity. And so at a pretty young age, I think she was still in her 30s, she got the launch she needed and became governor of this very Republican state.
When we talked a year ago, I said, Governor, do you think South Carolina is ready for a female governor? And he said, I don't know about that, but they're ready for you.
And I remember that race and members of her own party did subject her to quite a bit of racist abuse as well. What kind of platform did she run on, and what were her political priorities? Did she make them clear?
Well, her message, and again, this nicely meshed with the alleged scandals and the efforts to smear her as a woman. She was running against the good old boys of the South Carolina Republican establishment. And in South Carolina, that doesn't just mean old men. It also means people that really were old Dixiecrats that migrated out of the Democratic Party to the Republican Party for convenience and brought a lot of their racist baggage along with them. And, like a lot of other Southern states, there was a, modern Republican movement. They called themselves at the time Reform Conservatives, who wanted really hardcore right-wing fiscal and economic policies, but without the racism. And she was a perfect profile for that, not just because of her message, but because of her identity. And sure enough, she did beat the good old boys.
Well, it's interesting. The thing that probably many national folks know her for was that stand taking down the Confederate flag from the State House grounds after the massacre in 2015. We all remember at Mother Emanuel.
Authorities in Charleston, South Carolina are searching for a gunman who walked into a downtown church around 9 p.m. Eastern time Wednesday night and opened fire. 9 people are dead, 8 were killed at the scene.
And 9 African Americans were shot and killed, including a legislator Clementa Pinkley, and a reverend.
Local officials called it a hate crime.
Let me say this is the worst night of my career. This is clearly...
What do you make of that, and what folks perceived and what the reality was?
Well, she hit all the right notes at the time. There's no way I could criticize her reaction, her pretty much heartfelt sympathy for what happened, her efforts to sort of unite Black and white South Carolinians in mourning what happened in Charleston. But she got adulatory national press for that gesture. And I might add, it was a good 20 years after a previous Republican governor of South Carolina tried to do the same thing and really got into political trouble for it. I would argue that by the time Nikki Haley took down the flag, it was pretty much non-controversial, which showed some excellent timing on her part, but I think she got a little bit too much credit for being something that she's not, which is some sort of progressive or even moderate. I find it very interesting that she does not mention that in her announcement video. There are images of the days after the massacre, but no reference to her taking down the Confederate flag from the State House. You know, she has subsequently, by the way, said that Dylan Roof, the murderer in Charleston, hijacked the Confederate flag, which was basically suggesting that it was a perfectly acceptable, noble symbol before he hijacked it in his murderous rage. So I'm not quite sure if she's really she's soft pedaling that to placate neo-Confederates in the Republican Party or what.
She also made a pretty big show of not supporting Trump in 2016 because of his rhetoric.
Yep.
And she tied that rhetoric to the violence like Charleston that was going on in the country. But in 2017, she flip-flopped and joined his administration as United States ambassador to the UN, United Nations.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the United Nations, has been very special to me. She's done an incredible job. She's a fantastic person, very importantly, but she also is somebody that gets it.
So why the change of heart, and what was her tenure there like?
Well, she's hardly alone in moving all over the place in her relationship with Donald J. Trump among Republicans. I mean, her senior U.S. Senator, Lindsey Graham, has danced like Arthur Murray, going back and forth on Trump for years. So I don't know that she's distinguished herself in duplicity question of Trump, but she has moved around an awful lot. She said harsh things about him in 2016, but then supported his general election campaign. She accepted a position in his administration, but seemed to be whispering to media that she wasn't really his person. She was appointed UN ambassador, checked that all-important foreign policy box, and managed, and this really did impress me at the time, managed to sort of vaguely convey the sense that she was independent of Donald Trump in terms of what she said and did at the UN without ever really criticizing him either. So she developed this sort of reputation as an independent figure who wasn't opposed to Donald Trump, but certainly wasn't his creature.
All that changed on January 6th, sort of. At the RNC the day after the insurrection, Haley told her fellow Republicans that Trump's, quote, actions since Election Day will be judged harshly by history, unquote. That level of conviction didn't last long, though. Ed put it like this.
After January the 6th, she said some very negative things about Trump, said he had disqualified himself, frankly, from further national leadership.
Nikki Haley is now coming out criticizing her former boss, telling Politico in an extensive new piece, quote, I don't think he's going to be in the picture. I don't think he can. He's fallen so far. We need to acknowledge he let us down. He went down the path he shouldn't have. And
then not too long after that, she backtracked and said, in fact, if he ran for president in 2024, she would support him. Obviously, that's not happening. I mean, her constituency in the Republican Party, if she's going to succeed in the presidential campaign, is going to be among people who are tired of Trump, whether they liked him or not or supported him or not in the past.
We'll be right back after the break.
Hi, I'm Dahlia Lithwick, host of Slate's Amicus podcast, and I'm here to tell you that we have a special offer on Slate memberships. You can now get 3 months of Slate Plus for just $15, and you'll get no ads on any Slate podcasts, member-exclusive episodes and segments on my show Amicus, and shows like Political Gabfest and Slow Burn, and unlimited reading on the Slate site. And best of all, you would be supporting all of Slate's independent journalism as we cover everything that is happening in the news every day. Sign up for Slate Plus at slate.com/podcast plus. Again, that's 3 months for only $15. So sign up now at slate.com/podcasts plus.
Much of Haley's career is built on her ability to play both sides, on the issues, on Trump, on pretty much everything. But Ed says that won't be as easy in a presidential campaign.
If she's serious about running for president, she's going to be spending a lot of time at pizza ranches in Iowa very soon, where just regular Republican voters are going to ask her a lot of questions about who she is, what she's done, what she wants to do. And it's pretty serious scrutiny. So to the extent that I think maybe she has benefited from some ambivalence about what she stands for, and from, frankly, unearned positive media attention, that could wear off pretty quickly in a presidential campaign.
Do you think her announcement is amounting to maybe hopes that folks are finally casting Trump aside, both voters and the party?
Sure, I think that's the calculation. The problem is that's also the calculation of Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, Mike Pompeo. Lord knows who is going to wind up in this race. And all of them not named Donald Trump are going to be calculating that Republicans are tired of Donald Trump. Why Nikki Haley, though, as opposed to some of these other candidates who are particularly DeSantis, who's starting way, way, way ahead of her early in the going. And she is from an early state, South Carolina, which votes third in the Republican presidential nominating contest. Donald Trump had an event there recently where he locked up really about half the well-known politicians in the state, including Senator Lindsey Graham, the current governor, the current lieutenant governor, the state treasurer, I think 3 members of the U.S. House. So, she's got some catching up to do in her home state. And then, Ron DeSantis will clearly be strong there, just like he is everywhere else at the moment. So if she loses her home state, her presidential campaign is done.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about her relationship with Trump. He usually goes harsh after someone who has criticized him so much in such stark condemnation as she did when it came to January 6th. But he really hasn't come out yet. Does he see her as real competition?
Frankly, Trump's public attitude towards her can only be described as condescending. It's going to be interesting from his point of view how he talks about Haley, but I don't think, I think his general posture right now is he doesn't take her seriously enough to go after her the way he normally does his political rivals. And who knows? I mean, in any given moment, Donald Trump can erupt, and he may give her a nasty nickname. He may go after her personally. Who knows? The problem for Nikki Haley is that's not within her control. So if she's going to define her relationship with Donald Trump in a way that improves her prospects, she's got to get on it right now, not just wait around to see what he's going to do.
The open question is exactly what shape Haley's ambitions will take if being president isn't on the table. Some commentators have already begun positioning her as a possible vice presidential candidate on Trump's ticket. And while Ed's quick to point out that it's racist and sexist to assume that's the most Haley can aspire to, he says it's also not clear she's ruled being VP out.
If, let's just say for the sake of argument, she does want to be vice president and Trump wins the nomination and she's on his list, there have been reports already that Trump is maybe exclusively considering women as a running mate for all kinds of obvious reasons. I do think that if she winds up in that position, she's not going to have the independence from Trump that she sort of implied that she had as a member of his administration. I mean, the perpetual role model for a Trump vice president is Mike Pence prior to January 6th, which the sort of craven, toadying to the president with his big shoulders, as Mike Pence said about 1,000 times. I think the bigger question about the vice presidency is whether Haley really wants to do that. And of course, there's also the very strong possibility that the nominee is not going to be Donald Trump. It's going to be Ron DeSantis. And she's 51 years old, which is pretty young, in terms of contemporary presidential expectations. She's basically a quarter century younger than Donald Trump. And, she doesn't have to run for president right now, which again is part of the reason I wonder why she's doing it right now. But nobody really knows what the post-Trump Republican Party is going to look like. It's probably going to be a little Trumpier than she's shown herself to be so far, and there's competition. So maybe she is the future of the Republican Party, but it may be a really distant future at this point.
Thank you, Ed Kilgore.
Thank you, Mary.
Ed Kilgore is a political columnist for New York Magazine. That's the show. If you're a fan of What Next, the best way to support our work is to join Slate Plus. Go to slate.com/whatnextplus to sign up. What Next is produced by Elena Schwartz, Anna Phillips, Paige Osborne, and Madeline Ducharme. We're getting help from Jarrett Downing and Laura Spencer. We're led by Alicia Montgomery with a little help from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary C. Curtis, columnist for Roll Call and host of its Equal Time podcast. Thanks for listening.